On this episode of Outside of the Box, we're talking about the spirit of collaboration with the champs of the NHRL teams event.
I had made like a passing comment. It would be hilarious if the top three bots in each weight class formed on a team. Next thing I know, Adam started a Facebook chat and we started talking about it and we were all on board with it.
There's another team was actually asking about Megatron, and I'm like, man, Megatron's so expensive. I don't really want to bring it. I need to find out who's going. And I think that led to another conversation to find out, oh, hey, are you interested in this or not?
Everyone in the community was like trying to count up all of the, okay, who's on the team? Who could it possibly be, to try to figure out what the dream team was.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And if you didn't watch the ESPN episode on NHRL, shame on you. And if you did watch it, then you probably understand why I have these particular people on this episode of the show, which is the winners of all of the weight classes from the NHRL teams event, Ariel, Jamison, and Matt. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's great to be back on.
Yes, everyone has been multi-time guests before, so you know the drill, you know how this goes. And first of all, talking about teams, because it was such I think, a unique opportunity and event. I mean, when I heard about it, I was like, I wish I started building robots a couple of years ago, because there's no chance that I'm getting on a team because I don't really have anything to contribute at this point. But I was so excited for everybody that did get to be part of it. What did you all think about it when you first heard of the idea of this?
I thought the concept was awesome, but never in a million years did I think I would end up being on a team with Jamison and Calvin. But I'm very grateful for that opportunity, and I'm glad NHRL actually came up with this concept because I learned a lot and it was actually quite fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun cheering for Emulsifier. Usually I'm on the other side, right?
Malsy, get it right.
No, come on, don't make it through the bracket. And it's like, yes, this keeps going.
Yeah, that was a nice little change of tune, being able to cheer for each other instead of gunning for each other.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, Team Pandemonium was very excited for the opportunity because we had a bot in every weight class. So people from our core team were able to join up and do this event, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the different thing for you, Ariel, versus Matt and Jamison, is that Team Pandemonium is an already established team within NHRL, and you have all of the bots and things like that. But there were also a lot of teams that kind of had to form and come together just because of, needing a bot in this weight class. So I'm curious, since you brought it up, Matt, how did you come to be on a team with Jamison and Calvin?
Well, it kind of went back to Adam, my friend Adam from Knockoff White and Shatter, and I were just talking about this, and we both run 30, so we couldn't really be on a team together. I had made a passing comment. It would be hilarious if the top three bots in each weight class formed on a team. Next thing I know, Adam started a Facebook chat with me, JMO, and Calvin, and we started talking about it, and we were all on board with it, so we went with it. And that's kind of how it came to be.
And actually, to add on to that story, before that chat was started, there's another team was actually asking about Megatron, and I'm like, man, Megatron's so expensive. I don't really want to bring it. I need to find out who's going. So I asked Adam. I was like, is Matt planning on bringing Emulsifier? Because if he is, I'm probably not going to do it. And I think that led to another conversation to find out, oh, hey, are you interested in this or not? That was pretty funny.
I still remember the teaser post that JMO put out that had all of the dumpsters and golden breaths and everything. And I don't know if you know this, but everyone in the community was trying to count up all of the, okay, who's on the team? Who could it possibly be? I actually got out the highlighter and started highlighting all of the possible dumpsters and everything to try to figure out what the dream team was.
That's hilarious. I would say though, you made a good choice, JMO, because Psycho is my personal favorite of the bots. So I was excited to see it, and especially doing so well. Now, obviously, we talked about like forming the teams and stuff like that, but at what point did you know anything about like that this was going to be a bigger deal, like that this was going to be part of something larger in terms of filming it for something, that was going to be on TV?
I mean, I think they kind of teased us a lot, they're like, oh, we're planning something, hush, hush. I feel like maybe the turning point was when we had some initial planning meetings that had to start with an NDA. I think anytime you whip out the NDA, it's like, oh, here's some legalese. We're serious. And it was pretty cool. I mean, once we got the lowdown to it, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And I love everything that they've done with it. I've always been a big fan of this sort of enhanced production quality that NHRL brings, but now we're, unifying, trying to get some story, putting a little bit more like branding to show these collections of teams. And I thought that was a really neat aspect, in contrast to All Stars in December last year was kind of like, robots that performed well, or were like big names, or, were showy in this way or that. And I felt like this was one step above the All Stars concept, and I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we had to sign NDAs before we even knew that anything was going on. So it was interesting to be in those initial meetings and finding out that, this was going to be on ESPN and then not being able to talk about it for a very long time, which I guess is similar to, what they do with BattleBots and everything. But it felt like this secret that you just weren't allowed to talk about.
Well, that's true. I mean, the thing that I thought was really cool about it, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit. Well, actually, I'd be curious to get all of your thoughts on this because, like JMO, you and Matt have obviously been on TV for BattleBots, and so you kind of had that kind of aspect. Whereas Ariel, I mean, obviously on a lot of the NHRL streams, but being on ESPN is a little bit of a different level to it. But this, I think, was different than just like being on BattleBots because it was more of a way to introduce the sport to people that may not be exposed to it, that might want to be interested in and get involved. And it was more about like growing the community, I think, than just being a production and just being something to entertain people. And I think like that aspect of it meant just a little bit more, especially for the folks that maybe haven't had the opportunity to be on that like stage, and have like their bots and their work and everything that they're passionate about kind of put out there for people to see. So I'm just curious to get everybody's thoughts on that part of it.
Yeah, I think the way they handled the production on this was really great. And it became a show that, like you're saying, is about the community and introducing people to the community. It was less about like, oh, watch this fight in this order and follow the bracket. They did a great job introducing this on ESPN, I think.
Yeah, I definitely adding on to that as well. I mean, well, from one perspective, it was definitely still a tournament. So, but also remembering that it was going to be filmed for entertainment and introductory purposes, kind of like reminding yourself to be like, okay, I need to be, you know, one tier above normal competitor to slightly more entertaining. And I kind of hope that we did a lot of like private interview type things. They showed a few of them throughout the little clip. I hope they show more of those because some of them are hilarious. I do want to say one person that really stepped up into that role was Jake. He's like probably number one most entertaining person in that entire like 24 minutes. He did it perfectly.
Yeah, he did great. Yeah. It's funny because I during the event, like I did those interviews as well. And like you're saying, you sort of have to like be more entertaining knowing that it's on TV. I had no concept of that during the event. because I was just continuously shocked that I was still in the competition. I mean, even the fact that I'm like here at the table with you two is kind of insane to me. So like it was all a blur to me. I definitely was not trying to be entertaining. I was just in shock the whole time.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned like you came back from like the initial fire, and then it's kind of like every single win after that is like I'm still in it. And I kind of felt the same way too, because I was having like second fight, I had a drive controller just randomly die and trying to figure out, okay, how do I keep that from happening again? And then the Nightcrawler fight, I had the weapon ESC, the weapon just shut off, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what happened there either. Every little step I can go above, it's just, another prayer answered, I suppose, until you have no more fights. So definitely nervous, definitely a little sweaty right there. So I feel you.
Yeah, I think the ESPN segment definitely had more of a community vibe to it than, let's say, your typical BattleBots episode, where it's, more like your top level competition, and it's everything's a lot more serious. But yeah, I mean, Jake, he's a character. I think he probably got more airtime than than just about anybody in that episode. But I can't speak for everyone, but I'm sure we all did plenty of interviews, and they filmed so much content for that. And I think they did a really good job of putting as much as they could in the 24-hour time slot. Obviously, you're not going to be able to capture everything, but I was kind of surprised at how much they were able to cram into that episode.
Yeah, it was a lot of content for a pretty short episode, but I really thought that it was great and really well done. And yes, Jake Hoffmann is always entertaining, and if anybody thinks that he's entertaining, then you're definitely going to want to catch my robots and or dragons and robots thing that I'm going to be doing a little bit later this month. So I just had to throw that in there. But yeah, I really want to talk about kind of the event for all of you in terms of like your preparation and how you felt going through it, and like were you surprised at the result? And I'll start with Ariel, which first of all, you do not give yourself enough credit, Ariel. Like you are my hero. So please talk about Beetlejuice and how you prepared for the event, and like what that process was like going through the tournament.
Yeah. So preparation for teams was a lot. Um, I changed so many things about Beetlejuice before this event, and that's always been bad luck for me. It's like I'm going to change everything and let's just start over. And then you have all the gremlins and everything. Um, so like I went to a larger weapon motor. I completely changed my electronics. I completely changed my frame. Um, Everything was new, and that was terrifying going into it. And I had those sort of, new bot gremlins at my first fight. I fought Chubby Unicorn. I knew that fight was not going to go my way because it's unicorn. So, that's fine. And then I smoked a weapon motor and I was like, well, that's my day. I'm probably going to go 0-2 and go home anyways. I'm just happy to be here. It was a lot of fun. Um, and then Tim from Chubby Unicorn and my whole team sort of rallied against, like, with me and helped me fix my ESC issues, change a bunch of settings, and it made a world of difference. And after that, everything was just sort of running flawlessly. I had my next fight with Camino and sort of like ripped his wedge off under him. And that was a pretty short fight. And then after that, I had my Honey Spark fight, which is another horizontal. And that was a crazy fight because I almost knocked myself out multiple times. Because Beetlejuice is incredibly chaotic. And every time I hit something, instead of a vert where the energy goes into the floor, it just like throws me. So I end up like getting stuck on walls and hitting Brett and all sorts of stuff all the time. And horizontal versus horizontal was even more chaotic. So I ended up getting stuck pretty immediately. But I did come back and like rip off his weapon and his wheel. And that was crazy. But I had to use my unstick, and I ended up turning my weapon way down and like chilling out so I wouldn't get myself stuck on the wall. And the last 10 seconds, Kevin, my partner, was like, all right, 100%. And I turned my weapon all the way up and I ended up like smashing him and then getting stuck on the wall in the last 10 seconds. So if I hadn't turned my weapon down, I probably would have knocked myself out of that fight and not made it to the bracket. But I did. And then as soon as I entered the bracket, I had the Sombra fight. And I was like, cool, I'm done. Good. It was a good day. This was fun. And immediately ripped Sombra's weapon off in like the first hit, which was like the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Then I fought Fun Size, which was also an incredibly hard fight, and I took so much damage during that fight. And if Kevin wasn't standing there with me, I probably would have lost that one too, because he was like counting every hit that I should have taken. Um, and then there was the Eruption fight, which was probably not the final that anybody really wanted, because it was a lot of like crab walking and just kind of trying to get hits in. And ended up winning that one by a judge's decision. And every single win was just like, how is this happening? This isn't what was supposed to happen today. And like having my team there to help me. And it was just an amazing day. It was an amazing day.
Well deserved. We'll go to 12 pounds. What about you, JMO? What was that prep like, and how was the day for you?
Oh, well, the prep was actually trying to figure out why April didn't go the way I wanted to. So I had this is a new version of Psycho, and in April was the first time I ran it with the upgrades, and there's a lot of things that just didn't really seem to work well. If anybody remembers, and I have this written in my blog now, is that I had a first fight where basically just turned on the weapon, it smoked. Various other random issues, it being kind of intermittent, not driving properly. And those are all things I'm like, that's unacceptable. I can't have that for this event. Like, we got to turn it up to 11, you know? So a lot of effort went into characterization, diagnosis, trying to figure out what's the difference? Why did one Psycho work? Why the other one didn't work? Why is it having trouble starting to drive? How do I fix that? And so I was like, just diagnosing, diagnose, implement, and then also some frame changes to help it take some hits a little bit better. This is like failure modes I've never seen before, like pulling the press fit shafts that I've been using for like the past 2 years, suddenly are insufficient. And I was like, that's odd. So trying to solve all those little details. I also made some kind of new parts. I mean, this is gonna be on ESPN, so I made the robot a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, some cosmetic pieces here and there, some, interesting little side decals and, et cetera, et cetera. And also this like ridiculous billet wedge. It was like it was basically like an axe head. I could just throw it against a cardboard box, it would embed it in there. It's just a solid piece of steel. Due in part to I don't have access to welding anymore, so I'm like, I need a new wedge. I guess I'm just gonna throw it to Far East Machining and then see if they can turn it out. And it was a solid piece of hardened steel, and I was actually allowed to have that because Psycho doesn't weigh very much at all. And I'm like, this is gonna be great against Maximizer. Yeah. And then the other horizontal, which I ended up getting to try it out. But that's what Psycho's prep was like. And so after all of that, I was feeling pretty good. So going into fight Caldera 12, I just need to make sure I line things up nice. I think that first hit did go my way. It actually bent Glenn's blade, and he clipped his belt and he tapped out soon after that. The next two fights, so I was mentioning earlier, RoboCat. I feel like, okay, if I line them up straight, I should be able to do pretty well. But one of the hits where we just kind of like connected and bounced backwards, one of my drive ESCs just randomly just died, just popped. So I was crab walking for that, and I started to become a little bit like, oh no, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pull this one out. Last time in the All Stars in December, I went 1-1, but was still not enough to advance. And so I was kind of in this mentality where I need to get as many wins, as many points as possible, so I don't run into that no matter who the opponent is. I just need to somehow like tough it out. Fortunately for me, when he was engaging, he was actually losing more of his parts until ultimately he killed himself when he was trying to self-right. So I got lucky there. The third fight against Nightcrawler, another mysterious thing. First hit going weapon to weapon. I actually think I got the better of that first exchange, but my weapon shut off, and I'm not completely sure why. The weapon controller provides the BEC, and it was working. I was driving around, but the weapon just wouldn't arm. But to my other point, just don't get knocked out. Just try to keep in there. Nightcrawler had trouble spinning earlier as well, so maybe I can get his weapon to fail out. But no, it kept working, and like that unit took a lot of damage. It survived, but oh man, it was pretty rough. So after going into the tournament rounds, uh, even though I had lost to Nightcrawler, I was actually tied for points with Caldera for our group. I actually got the #1 spot because of the tiebreakers where we had fought direct 1-to-1. We had fought directly, and I had beat Caldera, so it gave me the #1 spot. If that were not the case, I could be facing a Yobnal, and that is a very different story. I felt a lot more comfortable fighting a horizontal spinner. Rim Ripper is a awesome looking, devastating robot, but I got to use my billet wedge, and that thing is pretty tanky, as it so turns out. And after that fight, I feel really bad for the Brazilian team. Zupa Cabra just got off a win up with Maximizer, but I think during their repair process, one of their drives or something wasn't working quite right. And so they were trying to diagnose. They had all hands on there. It was a huge flurry with the cameras watching. Like, this is the stuff that TV loves. I'm sure they're going to show it. They're just constantly working in there, test run, something's not running. They could not diagnose that drive site that wasn't working. And time was elapsed on the match call time. They're still working. So at some point they just had to put in what they had. And it was a weaponed robot with only one drive side. So if they had both drive sides, like Zupacabra obviously is a hard-hitting robot. I think I got pretty lucky there, but I'm also pretty happy that we didn't just, forfeit and whatever, because you never know what might happen. However, that did bring me into the finals versus king size. Yes, not super size, not fun size. King size. And that's the third time I fought the big robot with the small robot, and it is a bundle of nerves every single time I try to fight Joe, because it is just the David and Goliath classic, and he can mess me up real easy. And trying to avoid that while trying to score points, just the most I can do, is so incredibly dangerous. In fact, I think I almost lost it at the very end, actually multiple times. Where do I start? I got stuck on the wall. I gyro dance onto the wall. I had to use my unstick to free. Then I gyro dance on the wall again, and I had to spin the weapon backwards to climb off the wall by hitting the floor. And then, if you've seen me fight Joe a few times, like, it's a lot of loops, right? I'm just trying to hit him from coming from the side. And then, like, at that point, like, Matt, was that the last fight? You
I
already
think it
fought.
was the last fight of the tournament.
Yeah. So all the fights were already done. So like Dream Team and Adam were back there. And Adam's like, JO, you gotta be more aggressive. And I'm just like, super, susceptible mind. I was like, all right, let's go. And then I just like run into king size. My top plate gets all like super mangled. I got flipped over. And then it's like, oh shoot, that didn't look very good, did it? I self-righted, and then we're just like, oh well, what is what it is. And
Yeah.
that was a close judge's decision. Remember the 8-9s, the 9s and the 8s all across the board. I mean, that was super close.
Yep, that's about as close as it gets. Yeah, no, it was. I mean, from what I could see in in there, it was definitely a great fight. Now, Matt, I would say that I think Malsey was probably one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to win in the 30s, just based on prior history. But I'm sure that, like, in your mind, you're not going to go into it being like, I've got this in the bag. Like, you definitely have to prepare and like make sure that you're ready, because there's a lot of really good 30s out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I take every opponent very seriously, and none of those fights I go into thinking I got this in the bag. But as far as prep goes, really, I didn't really change much from the World Championships. It was just a matter of getting the bot back in good shape. Um, there's this running joke that the announcers at NHRL keep saying on the streams that I just throw my bot on the shelf for until the finals and I don't touch it and all that. But no, actually behind the scenes, even though I don't have a ton of damage to repair, I still will take apart the robot every last bolt and screw and inspect every little component, put everything back together. And, it's a tedious process. It probably is a little bit overkill, but that's my OCD, I guess. But I want to make sure I've got the bot tip top shape going into every competition. But yeah, my first fight was against Goose, who, if I understand right, I think they had won a college event just recently. So I knew they were going to be a formidable opponent, and they had a pretty scary beater bar on there. But right off the bat, they tried to box rush me, and I got the better of that exchange. They went flying and landed on one of the sideboards in the arena. And then it seemed like every hit after that, they just kept landing on like up against the sideboard with their wheels off the ground. And it just so worked out that they could never really get their feet on the ground. And I just kept staying on top of them. And they finally managed to break free. And I chased them across the arena. And as soon as they turned around, I got one good shot. I think it took their left side drive out completely. So it's just being super aggressive in that fight. The next fight was against Supersize. And that was one I was probably most worried about fighting because he can outreach me, and it's just such an awkward robot to fight. And I had 3D printed this really chunky pulley guard to protect my belts. I didn't want him to get a shot off on my V belts. So I bolted that on, and I bolted my thick top cover on. I didn't have weight for front attachment. So right off the bat, I go charging into him, and I think I clipped his axle on one side, and then somehow I ended up on my face. As huge oversight on my part to not realize the robot could land on its face with the treads completely off the ground. So I ended up having to use my unstick like 15 seconds into the fight. So after that, I was like, okay, I cannot get stuck again. But I got the weapon back up to speed, went charging in a couple more times, and was able to inflict enough damage for the tap out. But I kind of got fortunate there that I wasn't high centered and lose the match in that manner, because that would have been really frustrating. But after that, I fought Floor Letter Word, which the big horizontal spinner. And in that fight, I had just basically, my strategy was to not let him get up to speed. I box rushed him before he did get up to speed and just went weapon to weapon with him. And I sent him into the side of the arena and just followed it up with another hit, which tore into his frame. And he was done after that. I think his weapon was bound up. And then going into the bracket, first fight was against Yahoo, who I hate fighting Yahoo because every time I fight him, something on my robot breaks. Just that disc hitting that solid S7 or 4140 drum, it's just a lot of shock, on both sides. I was not looking forward to that fight. Yahoo has beaten me before, and we've gone back and forth, but I was able to get the better of him in that match and get him into the corner and stay on him. And I think Chad came running over to me during the fight. I don't think they aired this, but he's like, I'm dead. Just keep hitting me. I'm like, I don't want to look like I'm mean on camera or something. Like I'm just beating up a dead robot. So kind of just backed off a little bit. But no, that was totally cool. Chad was cool. And after that, I had to fight Adam, knockoff white. And we had actually fought once before back at Motorama. The very first year, Emulsifier had treads. And in that fight, it went to a judge's decision because my disc went down and his drive went down, and we both kind of just hobbled around the arena. This time, we had both our robots working in pretty good tip-top shape. And, you know, before the fight, Adam and I just kind of looked at each other like, no matter what, Bots FC is going to have a robot in the finals. So win or lose, we didn't really care. We were just wanting to put on a show. And he kind of bullied me around the arena for a little bit there until I was able to get my footing, and I was able to get around behind him and rip off his back panel. And I grabbed some of his wiring in the process and ripped some of this wiring out of the back of his robot. And after that, he was dead. And, we did the jersey swap. And, we knew going into that fight, no matter who won, we were going to be happy that we had a robot in the finals, our team. Our normal team, I should say. And then in the finals against Colossal Avian, that fight, they controlled the first half of that match. You didn't really see it from the short clips they showed, but he is a very good driver, and it was a little bit frustrating because I couldn't seem to get a shot off on him. And he's pushing me around. I couldn't get a clean shot off on him, but I'd say for that fight, all my experience fighting JMO with Megatron really came into play with how to fight a control bot like that. And, starting to resort to some of that style of driving, I was able to eventually get an opening or two and get the hits I needed to win that match. But without that experience fighting Megatron 5 or 6 times now, that probably would have went a lot differently.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I think that I think Matthew also said like, "Oh, I studied the Megatron fight, so like figure out how to do." I was like, the last 2 times it didn't go my way, so maybe it shouldn't.
That's funny. Now, I do have a couple last questions. So, one of those questions is we've talked about your fights, but were there any moments during the team's event not involving your robots that you were like, man, that was really cool?
Well, there's 2 things I'll say about that. This was such a unique event because it was a teams event that I normally don't pay attention to other weight classes. I'm usually hyper focused on the 3-pound class or hyper focused on the 12-pound class for one event. But I paid more attention to 12-pound and 30-pound fights during this event than any other time. And I've never seen anyone else as focused on 12 and 30 fights either. It's like up in the pits during like 30s, like a 30-pound fight would be on the screen and everybody's watching. And normally it's like those weight classes go a little bit under the radar and you have to like it's a smaller group of people. But I thought that was amazing. And it was just because like there were so many teams invested in their team. So I thought that was really great. The fight that I remember, which actually ended up getting a short, was one of JMO's fights against Battle Tots. And that one was hilarious. Just like piling the robots in the corner, just like you go over there. So that one was great.
I got a feel for Brandon, but that Pepe Sylvia versus Orion fight was brutal.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, it's like the unfortunate thing. Every time we fight robots, there's a winner, there's a loser, and sometimes the loser loses a lot of parts. But I mean, that was amazing to see what Pepe could do, but also like Orion continuing to work until the very last bit, and then Brandon showing like, oh yeah, I can do this now with my robot, and he's like flexing it in half. It's like, oh my goodness, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That was a crazy fight.
Orion was like, I didn't hear no bell. Yeah, I love to see it though. Like, you just keep going until there's nothing else to do, pretty much.
Highlighted fights. Oh, I feel so bad for Bob. Like two of like the 12-pound fights they showed were just Blue Marlin, like
Oh yeah.
the frame cracking. I'm just like, I mean, they looked spectacular, but I just feel, I mean, this has to be the same person. I was like, oh no. Oh,
Yeah.
this is I mean, that's what they want to see, though. I mean, this is like that's gonna grab so many eyes on ESPN, you know.
Yeah, if you're gonna go out, I guess you want to go out spectacularly.
That is very true. Without obviously knowing the entire like premise, whether NHRL kind of made this event purposely for the, putting it on ESPN or not, what do you all think about like this being a repeat thing, doing a teams event again in the future, not necessarily for the purpose of putting it on ESPN, but just to do it because it was really cool. And my goodness, I don't think I've ever been so motivated to buy merch from the NHRL that like when the teams jerseys, they're like, you can buy these. And I'm like, I need to find a way to afford to buy one from every team. So I just think it's a great idea. And I think it's something that should happen again.
And they're customizable too, right? You can pick your number and whatever name you want on the back.
Yeah, we actually did that for every other member of Team Pandemonium. So we like anyone who wasn't at the team's event, we got them all jerseys. So now our entire team can have their own custom jersey with their name and number, which was it's awesome. It's awesome to be able to do that.
That's really smart. We should form the actual dream team. Hmm.
Yeah, as
We
an actual
bid for
team
your
at a
loyalty.
different venue. Just don't come.
We're gonna bid for Matt's loyalty to Bots FC.
No, I had a blast doing the teams event, and I would definitely do it again. Yeah, I wasn't planning on competing again until the finals, and then when this came up and we had started talking about it, I was like, yeah, I'm in. This is going to be fun. And it was more fun than I could have ever imagined.
I mean, I think the more I got into it, the more exciting that it was.
Mhm.
It brought people together. We got unique themes. I think it was networking as much as it was a tournament, and it was just so much fun. I loved All Stars. I love teams even more. I'm curious to see what they'll do with it in the future. Like, are we going to have even more teams? Like, do the rosters stay the same? Ooh, imagine the shakeup, It could be so interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one. I hope they do it again.
Yeah, and I love some of the teams that were formed. I mean, obviously ours was like already a team, but some of the crazy teams that were formed were amazing. And like the matchups of the groups of people who just came together. This, crazy. I hope they do it again.
Yeah, I thought it was really great for community and getting people paired together that maybe hadn't been on a team together before, or, maybe in some cases didn't even really work together in any capacity, but just kind of came together in that way. And I think it was great. So next year, anybody who has food or fruit themed robots, get at me.
What would your
um,
team name be?
I don't know that
Gotta be
yet.
food fight.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Food fighters.
Probably it can't be apples, because I mean, like, there I don't know if anybody else has apple robots except for me. So
You need to call Anna and Little Rip.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Hey, there you go. Right here. Here's my advertisement.
See?
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
But yeah, I really hope that they do it again. I think that it was extremely entertaining. I think it's a way to, have people to be able to watch something that is so different from anything that NHRL has really done before. And I think it's just super unique. And yeah, I love it. I'm a big fan. So, and obviously, like, I think it was great that all of you were able to do so well. I always love when some of my favorite robots do good. So I'm not biased at all. NHRL, do another teams event.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that they do. I'm excited for the rest of the events this year. We still have a couple left. We still have finals, obviously, and then we'll see what happens in 2025. But for everyone who's watching, please make sure that you like, subscribe, share, follow, all that good stuff that you already do. We're pretty close to 900 subscribers as of this recording, so it's almost at 1,000, so that's awesome. And thank you all for everybody who supports the show. But just keep watching, and we'll see everybody next time.